Hi, I'm Netter, and this is Netter's Network. And today we're going to talk about your resume. Now, if you've seen my other video on job hunting, you know that your resume is a very important part of the process. Let's delve into that a little bit. Your resume tells a lot about you, and it lets a prospective employer know certain things about you. Those things include what companies you worked for prior, and therefore what industries those companies were in. It lets them know your skills, your accomplishments. If you have any awards, people will put those at the bottom of the resume a lot of times. I have a few on the bottom of my resume. It lets them know that I have certain things that were outstanding. If you are a notary, like I am, you want to make sure you put that at the bottom of your resume so that the employer sees that, and that may be something really important to them. The other thing that they're going to look at is, how long have you been with each company? Are you someone that's been there for years and years and you've really been there for the long haul? Or are you someone that changes job every 6 months to a year, and they call those job hoppers? They want to make sure that if they hire you, you're going to be staying with them, not moving on because you're bored or you found something better. Some of the things I want to talk to you about today are things that you need to be aware of before you send out that resume. The first thing is typos. Make sure you read over your resume very carefully to make sure that you don't have any typos in there, or you used a word that might be spelled correctly but it's not the word you wanted. For example, the word from or form. They're spelled very similarly, but you may want the word from and you spelled form instead. It's still a real word, so spell check is not going to flag it as being incorrect because it is a correct spelled word. So things like that you want to check over. There are so many times when people send out, it could be in the smallest typo, but there are typos on their resume, and that really can hurt them. There was a study done of 10,000 resumes sent out, and it was found that 68% of them had at least one typo. Of those 10,000 resumes, only 22% landed a job using that flawed resume. So check that over very carefully and make sure that your resume is flaw-free. The next thing I want to talk about is keywords. Your resume needs to include relevant keywords. Many recruiters rely on applicant tracking systems to screen the applicants automatically. And these systems will search for relevant keywords within the resume. So if your resume doesn't contain the right ones, it may not even make it to a person to review it. And most people don't know that applicant tracking systems are really important in the job hunt. A lot of recruiters will coach people on the importance of adding these keywords to their resume. And you want to make sure that you're tailoring your resume to include those keywords for the particular job that you are applying for. Which brings me to, you're using the same resume for every job application. The biggest red flag that a lot of resume writers will point out is that when they're reviewing resumes, they are seeing that the applicant is sending out the exact same resume for every single position. You need to tailor your resume for the particular job you're going for at that particular company. That means that your resume is less about you and more about what the company needs. So you want to make sure you got those keywords in there like I mentioned previously. Look at the job description and make your resume skills and work experience sections fit that description as best you can. Without lying, you want to use your actual relevant experience, but make sure that your resume is tailored as such so that it reflects those particular keywords. Use keywords to guide which of your unique accomplishments and projects you want to include on your resume. Cut out anything that's not relevant. And make sure you reread it to make sure it makes sense. The next thing is, your resume doesn't highlight your accomplishments. This is a quote from a career coach. The biggest mistake that I see is providing job duties instead of accomplishment-based metrics. People will list a ton of bullets on the resume, filled with information of what you would see in a job description, but no details on how that person impacted the organization through their accomplishments. Recruiters are more interested in your results than a laundry list of your past job responsibilities. So make sure you are listing your accomplishments, not your duties. Your resume includes too much irrelevant information. Another recruiter stated, "A huge mistake I see all the time is too much information on the document. Pages and pages full of every job and every duty ever performed is a sure way to have your resume passed over." The manager or recruiter is only spending a few seconds scanning over the document, so the information must be impactful and value-packed. This goes back to tailoring your resume to a specific job you're applying for. So trim the fat so that it's relevant for the job that you want. Your resume is hard to read. Formatting does make a difference. Craft a resume that's not hard to read. Include white space and an easy-to-read font. Don't use extra small font size to get more information on the page. It's too hard to read, they're going to just completely skip over your resume because it's like, I can't read this, I'm not going to bother. You also want to make sure you use bullet points for your success metrics and skills. These are really easy then for a hiring manager to spot and review. You have an unprofessional email address. Everything on your resume should be professional, including your email contact address. One of the deadly sins associated with resume writing is having an unprofessional email address. Before applying for a job, make sure you set up a professional email address that only contains either your name, your initials, maybe first initial, last name, something like that. And you can do it on the free sites. You can do it on Yahoo, you can do it in Gmail, but make it professional. In the last position that I held, I got to see a lot of email addresses for people who were applying for jobs, and I'd say 80 to 85% of them were very unprofessional. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I were a prospective employer, I might give pause about even calling someone in for an interview whose email address was partyprincess89. I think I'd rather skip that person and go to Mark Jones. It's more professional, and that sounds like a steady person that I can rely on, whereas Party Princess, I'm not sure that that's somebody I can rely on. The next thing is, your resume does not explain the gaps in employment. We tend to think of long periods of employment as red flags, but since millions of jobs have been displaced due to the pandemic, it's more commonplace now to see these gaps. If you have experienced unemployment this year due to the pandemic, or any point in your career, you're not alone. In your resume and in your cover letter, be honest about your gaps in employment. Explain that maybe you took time off to go to school, or you had to take time off to take care of a loved one. It explains the gaps, and it's not going to count against you. You can even say something like, after I left X company, I took time off to be caretaker to my parent, or my child, or my sibling, something along those lines. Or I took time off to go back to school and get my degree. Something that, can explain those gaps and is truthful is really helpful. In addition to why you're explaining the employment gaps, you should also highlight any skills, knowledge, and experience you gained during that period of unemployment. Did you take some classes while you were out? During this pandemic, it was a perfect opportunity for people to go online, take some classes, learn new skills. If those are things that are relevant to employment, make a note of it. Every little bit helps. If you develop skills as a caretaker, gained experience volunteering in your community, or completed online coursework to advance your skills and become a more desirable candidate, make sure you include that in your application. Your resume omits information or is inconsistent information. Basic information like previous job titles and dates of employment should be consistent throughout your resume and your online profiles. So if your resume doesn't match your LinkedIn profile, you need to make sure that they match. This could also include overlapping dates where you say that you left one company and then the next company you actually started working there 2 months before you left the other company. You want to make sure your dates are right and they're consistent. At best, the inconsistencies make it seem like you just have poor attention to detail, and at worst, it seems dishonest, like you're trying to hide something. The same is true if you omit this kind of information. Remember, you don't need to list your full employment experience on your resume, especially if you're at the midpoint or later in your career. So if you're self-conscious about some aspect of a job, it's better to leave it off entirely than to selectively omit details. So those are just some of the things you want to take into consideration when you are putting your resume together. So make sure that you don't have any typos. Make sure your resume includes relevant keywords. Make sure you're not using the same resume for every single job that you are applying to. Tailor it to that particular position and company. Make sure you highlight your accomplishments. Make sure you remove any irrelevant information. Make sure your resume is easy to read. Make sure you have a professional email address. Make sure you explain the gaps in your employment. Make sure there's no inconsistent information on your resume or omitted information that is needed. If you follow these tips, you should have the perfect resume for job hunting. I wish you luck in your job hunt and hope that you get something really soon. I want to thank you for watching, and while you're here, make sure you do all the YouTube things. Like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'd like to know what you think of this video, and if you have any helpful hints that I may have forgotten. If you list something that I haven't mentioned, I'll do a follow-up video and mention those items as well. Thank you again for watching. Have a really great day. Bye.